Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchist Dave, and today I'm hanging out with this.
Nerdarchist Ted, how you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
I'm doing amazing. All right, so Arcana-Tech and Under the Dome. Right now, Under the Dome is our D&D campaign. We're probably going to, also use the D66 system to create our own game in there as well. But with that, we're going to talk about some of the Arcana-Tech that we've been using. What is your impression of technology and Arcana-Tech and Under the Dome, Ted? Because you've mostly dealt with it as the player.
Sure. So, we've been playing this game for what, 2 years now, and I'm having an absolute blast with it. Our game, we are essentially like a D&D motorcycle gang. So I view the Arcana-Tech here as kind of pushing the boundaries outside the realm of anything that a typical fantasy game has done. Sure, we're playing in a post-apocalyptic world, but we have, motorcycles or larger vehicles that we've had access to. There are people who have, mechanical implants and things just to kind of spruce themselves up or to look different, and it changes the overall feel and vibe of the setting. Like, our literal first session was, oh, we're going to play a race around this city. You're going to go out of the dome, you're going to go loop around, and you're going to do a thing and come back here and, finish with a lap around the gladiator arena. An absolute blast to be like, I can't believe I'm playing D&D and riding a motorcycle. Like, I think that's fun. And to have kind of extrapolated that, okay, well, we're not using soul coins to fuel these things, but to have another power source. It offers not only the aspect of play where you can, hand wave, okay, you have enough to power your vehicle, or you can play the nitty gritty and be like, okay, you have X amount of fuel. It costs this much to use. Once you're out, if you don't have any more, your bike don't go anywhere. And that's one of the staples of technology. You need that shit. You're driving your car down the road. If you're not paying attention and you run out of gas, what are you gonna do? You're gonna hoof it to the nearest gas station. You're gonna call somebody to bring you something. Not a whole lot of choices. You're not gonna be like, okay, well, all right, well, I'll just leave this car here and forget about it, never coming back. Like,
Yeah, AAA doesn't exactly make it out to a wasteland. So one of the things is, and Under the Dome, the Arcana-Tech has reached a light industrial level, but it still has a limiting factor. They ration how the grind is used because people have to go out into the waste and scavenge it. It's very dangerous, and they probably lose a lot of scavengers. And in that sense, they probably also lose some of their technology to the waste, right? As those scavengers don't come back. And the most important use in Crystallia, which is the main part of the setting right now, which we're going to be expanding out, is in keeping the dome going is probably fueled by grind. That is always the primary use of grind. And then after that, it gets kind of dulled out by the city's ruling barons, which are referred to the grind barons, right? And that, or whatever you can kind of come up with on your own. And, also, I suspect too that there's also a stipend that gets paid back into the grind barons as well, and to the city, almost like a grind tax. Because for one, they actually have kept very tight control over the ability to manufacture and refine grind, right? So, like, while the players will go out and scavenge the raw chaos crystals that will be turned into grind, they still have to take it someplace to get refined. And I think that's one of the things that the players have been trying to figure out, like, in between adventuring. And not only that too, there's also like rumors of like black market grind refineries, but also there's a risk with using them.
sure.
Because there's a good chance that, it's like someone making gasoline out of oil in their bathtub. Not really. Like, maybe they know what they're doing and they're going to give you the good stuff, but maybe not. Maybe your motor's going to blow up.
But anytime that there is a resource and there is any level of control with it, there's always going to be those shady people who want to get involved and get a cut of, that money that's out there. So like that is an element that, could really be played up with, depending upon like what kind of game you decide to run. Like, you could be somebody who's working for the grind barons, and you're an upright citizen, you're trying to do your thing. So you're cracking down on all of this, black market nonsense. Or you can be like completely on the other side and like, okay, I'm going to get in thick with the Thieves Guild, and we're going to go in on this, and we're going to, try and destabilize the city and the grind, and, make our own stuff. Like, you can have a lot of fun depending upon, where you want to move that dial.
Yeah. And also, for anyone who is kind of new to the concept of Under the Dome, where the crystals come from, throughout all of our campaigns, the underlying theme has been chaos magic and chaos storms, right? And Stalia is, the first dome that we've explored in this setting. And the idea is post-apocalyptic. And the reason why it is, chaos magic has run rampant and has basically made most of the world uninhabitable because these storms, they come, they change things, they destroy, they create, and it is completely unpredictable. So now people have found a way to survive and hide from the storms or harness the storms in some cases. And, but when the storms happen, they come, they go. There's always leftover magic from these chaos storms. It usually appears in a crystalline form. And that is what the adventurers, the scavengers, go out and harvest. And also the purity levels are different as well. That's another reason why the refining process is kind of important as well, because even if you get a batch that isn't very pure, you can still make grind from it. You just won't get as much. But if you do it wrong, you're going to have tainted grind, and that can have different effects depending on how you use it. One of the things we have constructs in this world as well. I don't think we're going to actually delve into their origin as much as far as people remember, they've always been there. But we know now, and I totally ripped this off from the movie Robots. So now, like, when a new construct comes into existence, that is because someone or a construct was inspired to build a new one. And once they fulfill that inspiration, that which they create becomes sentient. That is how sentient constructs are created in this setting. They're not super common. Also, in previous campaigns, we had things called Vargarians, which are our Arcana-Borg, which even if they aren't directly in this world, the effects of them having been there at some point will be. And matter of fact, part of that can be seen in there's almost a religion, or two religions really, of body modders. One of them does it through construct parts, which also is a little problematic because sometimes constructs go missing and reappear on the black market for this purpose. And the other is flesh warpers, which is a bio version of that, where people are basically upgrading, grafting. So while not technologies per se, I feel like at a certain point, these are become sciences / religions, in this world. Definitely with the flesh warpers, there's definitely a religion that has spawned around that.
So I also made a new construct race for the dome that I'm working on, though I took the other bent of, or the other direction of, these things are new. So anyone who is playing one of these is like, all right, you've been born in this generation, but I've got the Aurum, and they're humanoid beings with shimmering metallic skin in shades of gold, silver, bronze, or iridescent hues. Their eyes glow faintly with arcane light, and their Balerium-infused veins pulse visibly beneath their skin. I kind of took inspiration from my sorcerer, so some of them have crystalline growths or metallic enhancements grafted into their forms, remnants of their experimental rituals used to create them. So, like, they are alchemically created by one of the ruling archmages who is interested in constructs and sentient, and they have a lot of automatons who don't have, sentience, but he wants to give them all sentience. And like, the rest of the rulers are like, why on earth would you do that? Right now, they're like awesome at just getting the job done. If you give them sentient, they're going to be less efficient.
We're going to have a robot uprising. So he wants to give them all a spark of sentience?
Yes. I created this, very, very complex ruling structure where, like, the 5 wizards that are in charge here, they are all needed to keep the city running, but they all have the desire to get rid of everyone else and just be a central ruler. So there's lots of fun of, if you were to decide to to kind of link up with one of these archmages for a game, like what kind of story could you tell? You know, how could you oust one and still have their power be doing the things that are necessary to keep the city running?
Now, where Under the Dome does not have black powder weapons per se, we've basically done the same thing, but with grind. So, you know, like the artificer in our one game, he uses pistols. There's been other instances where pistols and rifles have been used as well. He just used the black powder stats for them, but they are powered off of grind instead of black powder. And now the thing is, with this being a post-apocalyptic world, that means there's a lot of room for exploration and finding lost technologies, lost magics that are out there. Like, how far did civilization progress before the world completely goes to pot and the apocalypse happens, right? Of magic. How much technology was lost? And was it maybe that some of these these pockets of civilization that were able to survive, but perhaps that is one of the main reasons for that is because they weren't relying on new technologies, but old things like magic. In this particular case, because the apocalypse was brought about by magic, but sometimes you just need to fight fire with fire. And that was the solution. But that doesn't mean there isn't a dome out there somewhere that completely came up with a technological solution, you know, and, you know, might be very much more modernized in comparison to the domes that the dome I'm working on now and the one that Ted's working on. You know, we feel like, you know, so that leaves a lot of room for growth. And also, you know, since, you know, we've used Vargarians throughout our campaigns and they've kind of been like this threat and this villain, there might also be a Vargarian dome out there somewhere as well.
You know, there's to me, I have, you know, the thought patterns of maybe half a dozen domes that I want to make, but I'm not diving into a second and a third until I feel like I've done enough work on the first one, because I don't want to create something and be like, oh my God, I love this one even more, and just abandon the first one when I'm like right now so excited to like eventually run out of it. So
well, part of I think one of the guiding design principles that we've used, I won't speak for you, Ted, that I use is I try not to create more than I need and try and build out from there. Like, so, you know, like you mentioned, like doing another dome would only make sense if my players are going to the other dome, right? That's right. It is different if we, you know, decide to turn this into a campaign setting, and then eventually we're going to have to, right? Come up with
right.
the other locations. But, you know, from a DM standpoint and as a GM tip, you know, I read this I think it was the World Builder's Guide or a Dragon Magazine article, you know, probably like 20 plus years ago. And it took such a burden off my shoulders when I read, start small, build out from there. Don't make things your players aren't going to use. Wow, this is genius. This saves so much time.
Well, I look at it as, you know, I took the outline that you had for Crystalia and said, okay, you know, what elements are there? Okay, so you've got, you know, the central dome, you've got several different unique biomes, you know, nearby. You've got an external threat or two. You know, what can I do to kind of complement those things so that I would have the bare bones? Now, I would, you know, I could run it right now if I really had to off of what I've got, you know, figured out. But like my next step is to go in and get a little bit more work done on the actual city itself, because other than the archmages and their designs, like I haven't fleshed out the city. Like, you know, who are its, you know, core inhabitants and what does day-to-day life look like? I've got some cool elements that are splashed in that could occupy a handful of sessions, even more than that if you guys want to go out and explore one of these cool areas I've made or interact. Next is to build out the city so that I'm ready to go even more.
So one of the other things too is coming up with like ideas on how like these technologies affect the cultures as well. Right. And for instance, like grind has become part of the day-to-day life of everyone, even if they never touch it or handle it themselves, their lives are kind of dependent upon it. Right. But we also kind of like one of the things that that came up through play and discussion is, well, grind is generally used for mechanical things to power them. Well, we've got something called grind heads in the campaign setting. or at least in Crystalia anyway. Those are constructs that basically have become addicted to grind and use it to infuse themselves with it. Basically, they use it, they get high, right? And so there is a certain segment population of constructs in our world that are kind of degenerates that are just kind of always trying to figure out how to get their next fix of grind. I think too, when you're doing world building and developing a world, you need to think about how culturally this stuff's going to affect the campaign as well, right? In addition to that, we have motorcycle gangs because, well, you know, if you got motorcycle enthusiasts riding, why would they not get together in clubs? Some of them, you know, are legit. They just like to ride and race. Some of the racers in the different races that you guys have been involved in race for different reasons. Some of them are outlaws and they, you know, they are not on the up and up. Others, they're basically just motorheads, right? And they just love the idea of tweaking their bikes and making them better and getting just a little bit more out of them. So like, you know, those are two things on very different spectrums of how culturally the world is affected. And it's always cool to try and figure those out because it makes the world feel a little bit more alive and
when you have the ability to, you know, describe that, you know, to your player base, it gives them a jumping off point for, you know, character inspiration, for, you know, things to talk about during session 0, to be like, all right, well, I've never done that in D&D before. I think that sounds like a lot of fun. You know, how would I make that character, so that they can ask those questions and step into, you know, that kind of situation. I know I've never been a gearhead when it comes to like cars and that kind of stuff, and you know, but that's not to say that, you know, you couldn't do that in D&D and have an absolute blast with it. That's where, you know, fantasy and role playing come in.
Yeah, just because you're not one, it might not mean it wouldn't be fun to play one in a game.
Right.
And until next time, stay nerdy.